Thousands of local hopefuls have entered a first-of-its-kind contest to win a lucrative marijuana dispensary license in New York. News 12 takes you inside the high-stakes competition as we follow 3 applicants with aspirations of starting their own businesses.
This is a life-changing event.
Join us as we follow the 2-year journey of our hopeful entrepreneurs and see if they'll achieve their dreams.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Weed Talk News. You know, every week we try to feature a special person in our one-to-one section of our news. And this week we are honored to have I consider her a peer because she's had a lot of the same experiences as I did in the 30 years that I was in TV newsrooms, except she's far more talented, far more successful. I mean, did I see 53 Emmy Awards?
Yes, I think we're in the 50s, but thank you for that overly generous introduction. That was very kind of you.
No, I try to be kind to people. 53. Where do you keep all of that? I mean, I have one, and I keep it, on camera in the background. You know what I'm saying? Where do you keep 53 Emmys? You must have a separate room for them.
It's the biggest source of tension in my marriage, I can assure you.
Well,
my husband has had it with them.
and
We have
by
them
the
in the
way,
basement in boxes right now, currently.
where is he?
No, we have not my husband, but we have the Emmy Awards in boxes in the basement right now.
Oh, I get you. Okay, that's fine.
He's sick of them. He doesn't want them around.
I get it. I totally get it. But I have a ton of respect for someone with your resume and what you've done in the trenches for many, many years as an investigative reporter. And I have just watched, I wanted to make sure it was fresh, the 3 sections of a documentary that you were involved with. And I want to ask you right off the bat is the race for a cannabis license. Where in the world did you come up with that? And how did you find the 3 subjects you were working with?
So, as you're well aware, in March of 2021, marijuana was legalized here in the Empire State in New York. And I've lived in this community for a long time. I've been at my current shop now this summer. Actually, next month, it'll be 2 decades. So I live in the community. I'm a part of the community. And so I pretty much have my finger on the pulse of what people are thinking about and what's front of mind issues for them. And right after this happened, I felt like everywhere I went, people were asking questions about this historic piece of legislation and how is it going to work? How is it going to impact their neighborhood? So I knew I needed to do more. And this was at a time when the pandemic was raging. There was all kinds of protesting going on in New York City. And so it wasn't often in the A section or, the top of the newscast, but I felt like it should have been because of the implications, right? So we wanted to just go beneath the surface and dig a little deeper. And that was the genesis of how I got started on this journey.
It's great. You couldn't have picked 3 better people to follow around, let's just say.
Oh, yeah. I got really lucky. That was the hardest part of this is picking the characters.
I love how you mentioned the A section of the news, because we now separate our news into the A block, the B block, and the C block. And Elena says, people aren't going to know what blocks are. I go, well, we're going to teach them then. They're going to understand it, So anyway, I digress because that's what my brain does. And you mentioned your husband, so I'm going to kind of give you a curve here. And I want to talk about the challenges it is to be in a stable relationship and still be dedicated as a journalist. You're laughing. I mean, I worked many holidays in my life when I was a sportscaster. You have worked, I'm going to guess, even more. How challenging is it to balance that work-life thing when you're in the news business?
Well, it's a blessing and a curse. I say it all the time, but this isn't what I do. It's who I am. And I was, involved in student broadcasting going back to elementary school. This is my oxygen. It's all I've ever known. It's my life passion. So I don't think I would have been able to pick a partner who didn't love that part of me. And so thankfully, when it came time to, picking a husband and who was going to father my future beautiful daughter, I picked a news junkie. And so he loves the news business almost more than I do. So he's very, very, very supportive when I've had to pick up. It's you get no notice, you get an hour to get out the door. And he's just been very, very supportive. And he actually loved this project so much. I was on a true crime coverage binge for a while. So this was such a welcome, fresh breath of air for him to cover the cannabis rollout. So he was great, very supportive.
That's great. I love it that he's a news junkie. And as someone who used to work 3 to midnight, Wednesday through Sunday for 25 years,
I
okay,
did that shift too for a while. Yeah.
2 failed marriages, let's just say, okay, but a beautiful child. I am very
You're blessed.
content where I'm at right now, where I'm the boss, basically, and I produce a news show every week. But let's get back to the documentary, because I know that's what we want to talk about. And, I think it's funny, in your opening statement, you were talking about the excitement that New York had when they first legalized it, and Chuck Schumer went to the the cannabis parade, and hey, we did it, we did. I thought that was fantastic. Okay, but you got to be careful what you wish for, because New York has done a tremendous job of screwing up the beginning of an amazing market that they're not going to blow. They just totally screwed up the rollout of it. And by the way, not the first state to do that and have that issue. So it's not just New York. This is the most challenging industry, A, that I've ever been part of, and B, how many people have you talked to that cannabis saved my life, cannabis changed my life? I mean, you have 3 of them as subjects in your documentary, right?
Yeah, I think saying that the rollout was troubled is an undersell. The governor Hochul herself called it a disaster. I mean, it has faced colossal criticism now, almost since the get-go. So the criticism is universal, and which was disappointing, because there were a lot of people who placed a lot of hope in the program. It was historic. It was the first of its kind. You said a lot of states have tried it and had bumps in the road, but New York is the first state that did and handed out the licenses to justice applicants. So people who had been impacted in their lives with previous marijuana convictions and arrests. And so people, when you hear about something being the first, that's what I should have mentioned that earlier. That also really got our attention, because then there was this potential for our program to really be the benchmark on how other states who haven't legalized could proceed with their own programs. So I think there's a lot of disappointment, though recently, I'm sure you heard, the governor has issued a top to bottom review. The executive director is stepping down. Different various municipalities like New York City have started to crack down on our illegal shops, but it's slow going. And the verdict is yet to be seen, whether all of these steps that they're taking now will produce some results. But when you look at the numbers, right, there's 100, last I checked, it could be more today, but last I checked recently, it was like 122 shops are open in a state with, 20 million plus people, but yet there are thousands of illegal shops that are in existence now. So the people who played by the rules have really had a bumpy ride.
And that's a shame. And yet I really think the people that made those decisions about New York were trying to do the right thing. They wanted to give a break to the people who have been most impacted by the failed war on drugs. I get it. And we all do, I think, in a lot of ways. It was just the actual rollout of it was the thought was there, the execution was not. And it's really too bad. And you documented, 3 people that had, let's just say, difficult backgrounds, challenging backgrounds, that have all asked for social equity application and importance in their, get noticed. They get noticed as a social equity applicant. And then they find out just how much money it really costs to fill out the application, to get a lease on a place in a building, and you have to pay the rent for maybe even a year or 2 before you even go into that establishment. And it's the most regulated federally as possible. I too have had issues with banks, among other things. It's not easy, but it's the passion of the people in the industry that stands out, doesn't it, Tara?
Oh my goodness. So, when we started this project, I knew that if I didn't have strong characters, because this was investigative work, yes, but more than anything, it was investigative storytelling. And so I needed the characters to tell the story. So that was the hardest part of this journey, was tracking down those three individuals. And for them, boy, oh boy, what a roller coaster ride. I mean, we were there from the moment that they filled out those applications, and you saw the sparkle in their eyes and all the hope. And I think I mentioned to you, like, my biggest fear throughout this, once we had our characters and they got their applications in, I was like, well, what if this is a straight line, that they fill in their applications and then, a few weeks later they get their license and everything goes off without a hitch and the store is open. I was like, I'd be really happy for them, because I think we picked wonderful, terrific people, and I'm rooting for all three of them. But would that be an interesting documentary? And of course, it was anything but that. I mean, it felt like every other week it was a roller coaster ride. The highs were so high and the lows were so low that it was just jarring. You got whiplash following their journey. And at one point, when you mentioned the struggles, I remember the day I was at a networking convention with Yuri in the documentary, and they found out that the banks wouldn't be helping them out. And then we were with Jeremy one day, and the money that was promised for the rollouts was no longer going to be available. And they found out that they're all alone, all on an island with funding. So it was just pretty dramatic. And thankfully, Jeremy, you saw in the documentary, he made it to the finish line, but our hearts went out to all the other applicants who had literally invested their lost dollar into this project and couldn't afford to withstand the court challenges. There was just another challenge, I think, filed a week ago or so against the program. So a lot of people just couldn't see it through, and that was tragic for them.
We are in a litigious society, aren't we not? It's kind of a culture that we're in right now. I'm not sure it's a good one. I'll give you another thing that I picked up. You learned what cannabis standard time is. 40 steps forward, 2 steps back. Now, I only take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it's the same denomination. I mean, it's so not fun, but it's so fascinating to me when I hear stories from other parts of the country, New York in this case, and I'd say, oh, so-and-so went through that in Boston. Oh, so-and-so went through that in California. So-and-so went through that in wherever, Maryland. I really do believe, and you're an investigative reporter, okay, that the government is doing everything it possibly can to see that it is as difficult as possible for this industry to survive. Now, granted, I'm not that naive. I know that there's no meetings and there wasn't any strategy. It's just the way our world works when it comes to controlled substances. And of course, now we've got a big win, if you will, because now at least the federal government recognizes, you know what, this product may actually have medicinal benefits. Really? Really? After how many people have you heard cannabis save their lives and change their lives? So I guess what I'm asking is, did you ever feel in the middle of all that stuff going on in New York that this wouldn't work?
Yeah, I can't speak to anyone's intentions. I can just stick with, we're
Let's
documenting
find out.
these
Can
events
we
as
dig and
storytellers,
find out?
but,
Yeah.
what I can tell you is that our rollout, at least here in New York, by everyone's standards, not just mine, it was flawed. In fact, there was a state report that just came out recently, and it found a laundry list of failures, from inexperienced leadership, an underspent budget, not enough staff to process applications. I believe there was only I jotted down the number. Let's see. There's a backlog right now of 4,900 applications, I just read, and only 30 people to review it. So you look at that, and I think those numbers and that data tells the story better than anything.
It's not easy on any end, whether you're reporting on it, you're growing it, you're financing it, try to find a banking in it. It really is another challenge every day. And I guess it makes it exciting, but I know some of your subjects were ready to just scream, yell and scream and quit, but they didn't, did they?
No, you know, when you saw there was this one moment in the C block, which is the last third of the show after the last
Yes,
commercial
it
break.
is.
And just to clarify there,
Right.
and you saw Jeremy, who's this proud former member of a gang who has served hard time before, was a wonderful person who, you know, got a rough start in his life, and he really worked so hard to turn his life around. And you saw this macho guy break down, like literally cry that he didn't think that he was going to be able to go the distance with the latest setback. And it was just heartbreaking, but you know, they held on, he did everything he could. And to be there and to see the moment when he cut that ribbon, you know, we don't like to show any kind of bias as journalists, right? But I think you could see that we were very emotionally invested in his success. And I actually just spoke with him last week, and thank goodness he's one of the success stories. So Jeremy has his shop in Queens, and his cannabis dispensary, Turp Brothers, is one of the most successful shops already here in New York and in the tri-state. So we're really happy for him, and he's doing so well that he's now considering opening up a second shop. So we were happy to hear about that as well. And unfortunately, Jess and Yuri still haven't opened up yet. So Jessica, I believe, got her license. She was starting a delivery program. I haven't spoken with her recently, but I know she hasn't opened up her shop yet. And for Yuri, it's still the waiting game. He's still waiting to get a license.
Well, in Massachusetts, they made a change to the delivery laws that were really ridiculous at the beginning, which was to put two people, minimum of two people, delivering the order wherever they go, and that's just one person too many. It really is. The fighting the stigma. Have you learned how much people have prejudice against all this, and they just don't like the plant at all? I mean, have you seen those lessons? You've been in the middle of the stigma.
Sure, but that wasn't really my angle. So I was more focused on just the storytelling of three individuals navigating this first of a kind system. So all that other stuff, I was like in a filter. I just wanted to know how the journey unfolded for three people.
I'm going to give you a compliment, not that you need one after 50 odd Emmy Awards. It's the power of natural sound. It's the eavesdropping tool that the camera, and right now it's a smartphone, can bring to any story. And it was on display the entire time. Every single part I watched, I was like, oh she really knows how to tell a story with natural sound. You know, and to me, that's a great tool as a journalist, isn't it?
Well, thank you. That's the best compliment you could give an investigative storyteller. But we knew from the get. I remember the first 5 minutes when I met Jeremy, and I said, oh boy, do we have a Spitfire here? And so we knew no one wanted to hear my voice and my tracks and see me. We knew it was about the characters. So we just let all their sound bites breathe and let them tell their own journey. That's
great. And it's something I too believe in. Let the subject tell their own story.
That's right.
The best stories in television, I think, are the ones that have no narrative, and it's just eavesdropping, and then their feelings and their thoughts, and it's put together in a very professional way, and you can tell the story. It's storytelling. That's really what this whole thing is about. And now, as a executive producer and a trainer of, really 14 amateur correspondents all over the country, it's fun for me because I get to see the growth of the talent. I get to see how they are, and now they're going out and they're producing their own news stories and bringing it back. Some of them are even editing it and handing it to me, and I'm like, oh my God, thank you. I mean, it really is amazing, and but the single thing that bonds all of us together that are in this industry and on the media side, it's the reason why I started what I started, because traditional media is looking for the industry to stub their toe so they have a story to put on the as a lead in the A block, and yet no one was telling their stories like you did from a perspective of a professional journalist, because you understood how to tell a story, how to put it together. And now you go to I know who those three people are. I'm going to go visit the shop in Queens the next time I'm in.
You should. Tell them I sent you. Go give Jeremy a big hug.
I saw you on that documentary. You were on TV, right? I mean, it's fun. You know that the federal government made a big decision a few weeks ago, and now we've got cannabis as a political pawn in a presidential race. I never thought in a million years in my lifetime, I'm 66, okay? I never felt that I would ever hear an American president use the word marijuana in a positive way. I mean, I'm still in shock by it, to be honest with you. And it all started at the State of the Union. I'm pretty sure that was his first mention. And those that are following politics, and you've covered presidential campaigns in the past, I just want to make sure that this industry gets a fair shake if and when it ever goes federally legal. And I know you haven't watched any of my stuff, which is fine, but I'm big on, I want normalization and acceptance, not necessarily legalization, because legalization involves politicians and lawyers. And those are two groups of people that aren't well liked, let's just say, in our society. Do you feel like we're going to see the example of New York, what they had to go through and come out on the other side in 10 years from now, or whenever, however long it takes? Why did we wait this long, kind of a thing? Did you find that out?
Well, I think like anything, hopefully the rest of the country and states that haven't legalized yet, but are in the process of doing so, will learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, we're in the midst right now of a complete overhaul of OCM, which is the state agency regulating all this. And so why make the same mistakes as New York did? But certainly it's a political issue in New York and the rest of the country, and a lot of lessons to be learned.
Right.
But right now I'm on the campaign trail for some heated congressional races, and there's some big issues that are front of mind. So this one is, I think, not going to be a big factor in vote 2024, marching into the June primaries and the November elections in New York. But again, I hope that there's some really powerful lessons learned through our rollout here.
Well, you know, you're supposed to learn more from your mistakes than your successes, right? I mean, that's a thing, right? That's the journey of life. And I always kid. I said, well, with the amount of mistakes I've made, I should have a PhD by now, because I've made a lot of mistakes. And have I learned from them? We could talk about that. What did you learn? What did something that you didn't know before about cannabis that you learned from your 3 subjects?
What a great question. What did I learn? I think I learned that for a lot of the people in New York who have successfully received licenses and who have gone through the process, that it's not a business for them at all. It's not something where they're looking for a paycheck. It's a passion, it's a vocation, it's a way of life. And so now there was a dispensary, the first one that opens in a city near me, and I drove by and I just look at it differently with such different appreciation for the journeys that all of our cannabis entrepreneurs have been through, and the amount of work they had to put in to successfully receive a license.
Yeah, I'm going to throw something at you, and I hope you'll be honest about it. You know, when you're in traditional commercial television or radio, your success is based on the ratings, the size of the audience you're able to draw, and so that you could put products in front of that audience and everybody can go home happy with a little piece of the pie. By not allowing the industry to create public service announcements, there's no public positivity through broadcast journalism, because they're not allowed to do it. And this is one of the reasons why I started what I started, because I'm like, I saw someone do an interview back 5-6 years ago on CNBC, and the reporter interviewer was so ill prepared, asking about all the stereotypes. And I mean, it was like, did you do any research about the science that has moved us to this point? And they obviously hadn't. So I figured, you know what, I can do a better interview than her. So I started my little network. And I started with one little podcast, and then I had like 8, and then I was producing 3 shows a week, and then I got burnt out, and then I ran out of money. So now I'm just doing the newscast, because after you're in a newsroom, you know what it's like. It changes your life. It's your family that you're working with, isn't it? Your work family, anyway. And I'm sure you feel very And you've been at News 12 for quite a while, right?
20 years, coming in 2 weeks.
Well, congratulations on that. That alone should get you another trophy, as far as I'm concerned. Because I never.
I think when I was in my 20s, I might have been motivated a little more by, that race to get your first Emmy, because it only takes one to forever say you're an Emmy winning, blah, 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 right? But now I'm so much more motivated by doing work like this and following the journeys, or we got a state law change last year, or passed rather. And so that's the kind of stuff where I think we get the most satisfaction.
Yeah, and you're an investigative journalist. I mean, you're living the dream for every journalist that's out there, storyteller that's out there, and also playing the role of the freedom of speech and those that are out there that there's something wrong in the world. You want to investigate what happened, right? Isn't that kind of what you do? I mean, how and why?
That's it. And a lot of my best stories are viewer generated. So again, I mean, I've been in this market for so long that people know that they can turn to me. So it was kind of like with the cannabis journey. Once I hear if enough people stop me at the gas station in a supermarket within a couple of weeks, it's like, what are people talking to me and reaching me about it? And that's often my gauge for my most successful projects.
You mentioned gas stations. You know what's for sale in gas stations around the country, don't you? With Delta 8 products that are unlicensed. And kids are getting into it. So that our elected officials, the first thing they usually say when it comes to this stigma is, what about the kids? And I say, I've worked with kids my whole life. They know more about it than you do, because people are telling them not to do it, not to do this, do not do this. And as a rebel teenager, I wanted to do it even more when I was told not to do it. You would not like to have been my mother, let's just say.
We actually bought some of it. I forgot the name of what the product was. On my investigate. See, I'm getting old. I've been doing this too long. I can't remember the name of the investigation, but we bought some of those products and we bought them online, and my news director agreed to have it sent to his house. And we went and drove. I remember driving out to Pennsylvania to a specialized lab and having them tested. And these were things that we legally bought online. And it had the same chemical makeup as like heroin. So you really have to be careful of the stuff that you buy like that over the counter.
And you would
a little bit like Russian roulette.
Right. But you would think that a mature adult would know to do that. Right. And and even those that are selling it in those gas stations and convenience stores, they obviously have no conscience, because if a 15-year-old, 12-year-old kid comes in and wants to buy some, they can, because they're not even asked for their license or their ID. So, and I always point the finger back at our federal elected officials, because they had no idea what they were doing when they put out that 2018 Farm Bill and legalized the cannabis sativa plant. It is the same plant. It just has a different chemical makeup, a different cannabinoid makeup. I've learned so much about the endocannabinoid system and what impact it has on all this. And that now I see things and I look through them, because I'm looking for the reasons why they do this. As a journalist, don't you love the why question, the how question?
I live and breathe it. That's the passion of my life.
Right. And that's what goes through. And it shows in your work. And I congratulate you. And I really appreciate you spending some time with me, because I can identify with the work and time and the challenges in your own personal life, that work-life balance that you had to go through to be at one place for 20 years. That alone should get you a prize of some kind. Tara?
It's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
I tried to be a kind guy. You know what? It's better being a kind guy than being an asshole. You know what I'm saying? It just is. It just is. No confrontation. You want to make people happy. This is my charge, right? My dad was known as the nicest guy in the world. You know what a difficult challenge that is for me to live up to that every day? But I love doing it.
You found your passion.
Yes, I have. Like everyone else in this industry. And Tara Rosenblum, thank you so much for joining us here today and helping us out with Weed Talk News, because as you know, it's just a big pie, and all we do is fill up little slices of that hour, right? I mean, You get that.
Thank you for having me, and congrats on all your success. And obviously the success that you have with your newscast shows how many people all over the country and the world are passionate about this project and this product.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Thousands of local hopefuls have entered a first-of-its-kind contest to win a lucrative marijuana dispensary license in New York. News 12 takes you inside the high-stakes competition as we follow 3 applicants with aspirations of starting their own businesses.
This is a life-changing event.
Join us as we follow the 2-year journey of our hopeful entrepreneurs and see if they'll achieve their dreams.